In northern Botswana's Kalahari Desert lies the Okavango Delta, one of Africa's richest places for biodiversity. It is the home of the world's largest remaining elephant population, as well as lions, cheetahs, wild dogs, and hundreds of species of birds. But while the delta itself holds protected status, the Great Okavango Basin, whose waters feed it, does not. The Okavango Basin, spanning southern Angola, Namibia, and northern Botswana, is the primary water source for over 1 million people. The delta's health depends on the well-being of its source lakes and rivers, whose waters originate in the rains of Angola's highlands. The effects of climate change and population density, as well as mounting pressure from development, water diversion, and upstream commercial agriculture, are threatening the future of this vital lifeline. As a result, legal protection is urgently needed to preserve Angola's natural treasure and secure freshwater resources for future generations. If measures aren't taken to protect the critical freshwater systems that are their source, the water security of millions of people, and the incredible diversity of plant and animal species that define Africa will be at risk. This is the Okavango Delta's mayday call that hit the distress signals of the National Geographic Society, and respond they did. The National Geographic Society, in response, partnered with local filmmakers and storytellers in Botswana to produce a documentary dubbed Nkashi, Race for the Okavango. My name is Steve Mokaya, and I warmly welcome you to this podcast. On 9th March 2023, the documentary centered on the Nkashi, a pole, and a Mokoro, a canoe, premiered in Gaborone. The film, which features veteran National Geographic explorers and residents of the Delta, demonstrates the importance of the Delta to the people of Botswana and its role in biodiversity protection. The Botswana people, in the more than 100 islands on the Delta, compete in a race of canoes where a long pole is immersed in the water and pushed backward to propel the canoe forward. I was part of the press team that attended the event and talked with key people behind the film. Gobana Manketo, alias GB, the main protagonist in the film, says he and his descendants were born and raised in Seronga, a major part of the Delta. With thousands of people in the Delta, he says, they bank on the Delta for virtually everything.
My name is Gobana GB Keto from Seronga. Nkashi is the pole we use to move our Mokoro in the Delta, to move from island to island, to look for food, for building materials, fishing, and to visit friends or to connect to other villages. As we are born on the place where there's animals, so we are always with animals. So there's nowhere we can go without meeting animals. Wherever we go, there's animals. So we have learned all the behaviors. Even the born child of 1 year can show you that that is an elephant because he is learning from the childhood.
However, GB's main worry is about the declining water levels in the area. This phenomenon, which he attributes to human activity and climate change, might result in the death of the Delta, and very soon.
The water of the Okavango Delta is getting low and low and low every year. So we no longer have lots of water like we used to be. The government need to look at the water, especially the water in the Delta. Our water we have in the Delta, where it is come from, where the source of the Okavango Delta. That is the most important part of the Okavango Delta. Because if that source is not there, if you don't protect the source, the Okavango Delta will disappear. The Okavango Delta is going to die soon.
Dr. Steve Boyce, a conservationist, National Geographic fellow and researcher who has studied the Delta for years, confirms GB's fears. Steve has explored the basins of the Okavango, Kwando, and Zambezi rivers. Besides his research and exploration work across Africa, he founded the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project.
And there's a publication coming out by maybe October. I reviewed it yesterday or last week. It explains the water flows coming out of the water tower in Angola downstream. Now we see in the modeling that rainfall, because of El Nino, is becoming more variable here in Botswana and certainly in the Okavango Delta. So the fluctuations are much more. So you have much drier periods and much wetter, but overall it's going down, to a degree going down, with rainfall becoming more depressed in the Okavango Delta.
However, Steve says The Okavango Delta's saving grace, at least for now, is that its source tributaries stretch up to the Congo Basin, an area endowed with much rain and water.
In Angola, what the Okavango River does is it reaches as high as it can, just touching on the Congo Basin, and reach into areas where the rainfall is 3 or 4 times more than what you see locally in the Okavango Delta itself. And we're seeing those models are predicting increased rainfall up there. So you're going to start seeing the Okavango Delta becoming more and more dependent on water flows from the top.
In 2014, UNESCO named the Delta a World Heritage Site, a fact the explorer says should pull everyone together to protect the Delta and its basin for future generations.
2014, the Okavango Delta becomes 1,000th UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that was a call to action for all of us. All of us across the Okavango, our films, our science, always support that recognition.
Steve says that in the time that he has spent in the Delta Basin, particularly in the Angola highlands, he, with locals and other researchers, has discovered 143 new species in the area, thus rubber stamping the importance of this resource.
But they helped us find 143 new species to science. New species: fish, lizards, snakes, trees, orchids, flowers, the whole thing. Even the smallest antelope in Africa. It's called Kasenda. It's this tiny little thing, it's like a rabbit. It is a place beyond anything I've experienced.
Jill Tifanthala, the CEO of the National Geographic Society, says the film shows the urgent need to protect the waters of the Okavango right from the sources.
Since 2015, the team has worked to address one of the most ambitious conservation challenges in Africa, to secure sustainable protection for the source waters that feed the Okavango Basin. Botswana has been a leader in protecting the Okavango Delta. To ensure that the delta is sustained for future generations, it's also critically important to protect its source waters in Angola. Voices in the film raise urgency about protecting the entire ecosystem. The government of Botswana and De Beers Group, we are constantly learning from you and deeply respect the work you're leading. We're grateful to be on this journey with you to help secure long-term protection of the Okavango River Basin.
Meanwhile, Steve said that Okavango gives the world a fresh opportunity to better manage a water basin, with conservation as a critical cog in the management.
This is the world's largest undeveloped river basin, the Okavango. So it's kind of the last chance for the world to manage a river basin differently. In the developed world, Western world, America, I mean, they're taking dams down. They realize that they are not the solution to power generation and to agriculture and to the sharing of water. I'd like to see some form of a water bond between Angola, Namibia, Botswana. I'd like to see value of carbon in Africa recognized properly. On the carbon markets in Europe, it's $100 a ton. We're getting $5.
While at it, Steve said that Africa should integrate its people with their traditions and culture into conservation areas if the protected areas and endangered regions on the continent are to survive.
According to the Convention for Biological Diversity, the central part of that treaty is the ecosystems approach. People, their cultures and their traditions are an integral part of all ecosystems. We must look at ways in the Okavango Delta. We must look at ways in Kenya, look at ways all over Africa of bringing people with their cultural rights, their knowledge, their traditions, sustainably back into these landscapes. Because the national parks are protecting wildlife now, and we're very proud of that. Africa has elephants and lions, and that is special compared to the rest of the world. But we're not going to have that in 2035 unless we change this around. Allow people to have opportunities in tourism development inside these landscapes. That's the only way forward.
Kathleen Yenol, National Geographic Society's chief storyteller, says that besides the documentary celebrating the powerful ecosystem resource in Africa, it also aims to move those in authority to take action to protect the Delta.
My name is Caitlin Yarnall, and I'm the Chief Storytelling Officer at the National Geographic. My role is to make sure that the stories of the Delta and Botswana resonate first and foremost here within Botswana and across the African continent, but then resonate globally as well. National Geographic cares deeply about about illuminating and protecting the wonder of our world, and of course that includes fresh water around the world, which is under threat from various sources, from climate change to development to a lot of complex issues. those in positions of power can act to conserve the delta and the fresh water. And we do think this is a model that can be replicated.
To create awareness of the delta's importance to the people of Botswana, Koki Mokodi, the country director of the National Geographic Okavango Wilderness Project, says the film will be taught in classrooms in Botswana to teach the youngsters the significance of the Mokoro Nkashi culture in preserving the resource.
This film, Nkashi, Race for the Okavango, shows the human side of the Okavango Delta, what it means for people's livelihoods, for their culture, and for the traditions and stories they will pass on to their grandchildren. We have magnificent wildlife and an opulence of nature. But even my fellow Botswana haven't always heard these very human stories. Just like we want all of Botswana to support us in preserving our national treasure of the Delta, we want all of Botswana to join us in preserving indigenous traditions. We're going to keep telling the story of the Mokoro through roadshows. In our classrooms, we must also use this opportunity to raise awareness for protecting the entire Okavango Delta.
President Eric Masisi of Botswana heeds the call. He says the documentary underscores the significance of the Delta in Africa. Besides the film flying high the national flag of Botswana across the globe, he says it fires up his government to protect the near-pristine resource and others elsewhere in Botswana. He proudly says that already about 40% of them are under protection and conservation.
Today, we have the privilege of participating in a very important part of Botswana's environmental conservation journey, the premiere of a world-class documentary in Setswana about our annual river race, capturing the essence of the Delta. The outcome neatly encapsulates several key elements of our sustainable development objectives. Firstly, the importance of our natural environment to ensure the sustainable development of our nation. As a government, we have recognized this from the very beginning. Efforts to conserve our beautiful natural landscape have been a key focus and have resulted in significant achievements over time, such as the ongoing protection of some of our most precious creations of nature. And needless to mention the fact that we have conserved or preserved, protected 40% of our land mass as a nation state.
Dr. Steve Boyce reiterates that the Okavango Delta Basin is an opportunity to do things differently and actively involve the locals of natural resources in resource protection and conservation, especially in Africa.
This is the world's largest undeveloped river basin, the Okavango. So it's kind of the last chance for the world to manage a river basin differently. It's a unique opportunity for us to really focus on local wisdom and knowledge in the people.
Seronga, the music in this podcast is written and performed by Thato Kavinja from Botswana. Many thanks for your company throughout this podcast. My name is Steve Mokaya. Until next time, goodbye.
Abelegile duda, ibelegile bum.